Good morning. I am doing this week's forecast, July the 3rd through the 11th, 2022. And I am going to be using a hand rendered chart as per my usual. And this time I'm going to be using the stock market chart. And the reason I've chosen this is due to the times that we're living in. Many of us are fighting for freedom, for our financial well-being. And when we go to the gas pump and refill our tank up, we're finding that a rather difficult prospect. And I know for myself, I'm being a whole lot more mindful how I use my gas money if I want to go and spend money on gas or not. So, with one thing comes another, and that is mindfulness, awareness, not being somebody who needs to just get in my car and go all the time. And maybe that's part of what this lesson is. And what is really fascinating is oftentimes if we just embrace the lesson, often it'll pass without a lot of ado. So I'm going to go ahead and start to share my screen so we can just jump right in. And I am using, let's see, make sure this thing shares. You are now sharing. Okay. And it didn't show. I'm going to stop share because it didn't show participants are getting to see the screen. I think that is something I've learned about this. Okay. So we'll go back into this and do this again. Okay. So hopefully that worked right. We have the Black Tarot. And I really like this deck. I'm finding myself wanting to favor it. This morning, I went ahead and cleared it with my crystal ball, cleared all the energy out of it, then infused it with fire so that I could do this reading today. Many of us feeling, I would say, in a difficult place. I know previously we've been comfortable middle class, my husband and I, not overly, but we've always been able to pay our bills. And as the price of gas keeps creeping up and the cost of food and the availability of things, it keeps getting tighter. It does feel rather concerning. And for myself, in addition to it, I'm allergic to so many foods that when I, for instance, shop at Costco, I'm lucky if I can leave there with 4 or 5 things that I can eat that are safe for me to eat. Now, typically at this point, I eat a whole food diet and I'm eating foods like I have coconuts in the yard. I have somebody who once a week prepares me a coconut and I'm drinking coconut milk. I have avocados in my yard. I eat avocado out of my yard. I eat very differently than the average person, but nonetheless, when I go to Costco, it is not escaping me the cost of foods. I do not eat meat, so I don't stop and look at the meat aisle. I think I would have a heart attack if I were to do so and ate meat. So, and I don't eat meat, not for prejudice reasons that I'm bringing this up, but just because this is a really serious issue we're in financially. So my first bit of business is to talk about these cards. And I have them on the screen. The Queen of Wands. And this is a past, present, and future reading. Okay, so it's not anything special. Again, it's just simple. And the Queen of Wands is saying that she believed in a fiery way in her power, in her persuasion in the past, that she believed she knew exactly what she was doing and she was opulent and quite capable. But you can see that the fire is kind of behind her, as if saying that eventually she's going to walk outside of the fire. Something is going to cause the fire behind her to separate unless she's on fire. which might be. Then you get to the here and now, this Two of Swords, where the astrologers have been saying that this is about information coming forward. We've been saying it for a while, and because of the various placements of the planetary bodies, and not to mention the North and South nodes, where they're in the house of Scorpio and Taurus. So what is that saying? Well, this is reiterating that we are right now really thinking hard about what is it that we can or cannot do given our circumstances we find ourselves in. And I'm going to tell you something about duality that is interesting in this case. Duality is the process of being mirrored or mirroring. And a lot of times in that sense, we don't know who we are. And it's through mirroring and mirror that we are able to see ourselves. A lot of times in a therapeutic environment, that's exactly what's going on. We're allowing the person who's the client to speak and speak and speak, and we mirror. And eventually they see themselves. They see what they need to do. They sort it out themselves. This is the beauty of counseling and holding someone in high regard. By doing so, they are able to unfold themselves in where they weren't as children. A little counseling technique, not anything that too big of a deal. And then you see a King of Cups. So something in the future is going to happen that is going to be soothing and loving for the collective. Has not happened yet. We are in the heart of, I think, the financial pain. Perhaps this is saying that financially it only can go in this really horrible way for so long before something breaks loose and changes. And, you know, historically, that's what's happened. And in addition to that, our timing cycle-wise and astrologically is saying that we're in a time much like the Bolshevik Revolution, where the people came back and said, hey, no, I'm unwilling to do this financially like this. I will rebel. And anybody who gets pressed hard enough into what I think is a form of slavery that we're in currently, because when you go to work and you're part of a system that we think has our back, and yet you're going to maybe have a job that pays you X dollars a month, but your rent is $3,000 a month, your whole paycheck. That isn't a formula we can do. That's not a formula the average person can do. So this week's reading is going to be on the stock market. So let's go ahead and we'll stop share. And then we're going to go back to sharing the screen, and then we're going to pull up the chart, and here we go. There it is. The stock market, and it's October 29th, 1929, New York, New York, and 5 hours west. Right off the bat, I can see conflict. 5, the divine. 1929, 919 is a 10. And then the 2 and the 9 is an 11. So a completion process within, so this was the stock market crash. The date tells us 10, 29, so that would be 10, a completion, 29, 11, 1, 9, 10, a completion, 11 within the civic community. A little bit of numerology, which I like to use with my charts because I believe that it is relevant. This chart has no earth. So in other words, the overall underside of this stock market crash was, it was allowed to just run aground regardless of the consequences to those who live on planet Earth. And the question is now, these years later, on a different cycle, okay, is this a repeating theme? Now, this isn't, we're not quite 100 years from 1929 because we're 2022. So we're a few years shy, but astrologically, we're darn close. So very much in the influence of that particular cycle as well. And so in a way, to think of astrology so that it's easy to manage for your mind, it's like gears that turn. And in order for the gear over here to turn, the gear over here must turn. All the gears turn in a way that matches and meets the needs of the gears around it. And astrology really emphasizes that. Now, where this chart's really strong is in air. So intellectually very, very sharp, but it's additionally very strong in water, 7 points in water. So understands the psychic underbelly, the people, and how they think. And here we find ourselves in, and I dislike conspiracies. I don't really think there is a conspiracy here at all. I think this is called greed, okay? If you're in a time where you have a pandemic and you have prices going up, somewhere at the top, you can bet greed is a huge factor. And as greed goes on at the very top, it trickles down to those of us below. And you have to wonder what it is this particular energy is trying to tell us. Well, you can see here that's 5 in masculine and 5 in feminine. It's those are both 5s. That's conflict. It's saying there's something that's conflictual here. And probably what it is, the conflict is simple. It's called greed. The conflict is simple. Money corrupts. Money brings on greed within people. So this week's forecast is asking you to look at greed within yourself, because as within, so without, but greed also being the backbone of this problem we are all now experiencing. Greed has led us to this pain that we experience here today. And you can see up in the 9th and 10th house, right on the cusp, you have Mars, Sun, and Mercury. Mercury is going to be how the collective thinks. And then you've got right there on the cusp of the 8th and 9th house, the moon, how the receptivity. So what do we have? Well, Mercury, or excuse me, Scorpio. Scorpio is related to the 8th house, sex, death, rock and roll. On the cusp, it's going to be related to higher concepts and also government and institution type usage of other people's money, how that gets managed. And lo and behold, we're having this really huge issue right now. Well, by progression, what do we have? We are in Aquarius, moon and sun in Aquarius here by progression. So saying, I'm not really too concerned about the person at the end of the day. And Aquarius is an interesting energy in that it's your humanitarian, it's your electronic energy, right? It's informational, it's group-based, it's to help be a part of the other, but it's not a loving other. It is just a think of it as a connection, okay, in a group. And so by progression, where we're at is Venus saying that, yeah, we're kind of in 8 degrees locked down by progression. Sun is 9 degrees within humanitarian causes. And moon is going to be 16 degrees, which is going to be a 7, taking our money, that they're receptive to taking our money at this time, which for us is painful. Now you notice that in the 8th house, you have Virgo, you have Neptune, where we're getting lost in the details. It's almost more than we can keep up with socially and emotionally. And money is being creatively worked right out of our pockets. And notice the 11 again, which is going to be that energy of civic. Now, I realize this is a 1929 chart, but it's so similar to today's energy with the nodes in the 9th, or excuse me, in the 8th and 2nd house. So we've been saying, as I said, as astrologers, that information is being revealed. Well, this is true. What type of information? Well, I think what I'm seeing here is what this week's chart is saying is information about how we in the transit. Now let's talk about that. The sun is in Cancer and the moon is in Leo. How we have been manipulated in this Leonian kind of actor sort of way into not regarding our own selves in ways. And so you notice that you've got Pluto in the 7th. And that's saying that what we have is within our relationships, we have some issues. And so right now, Pluto is by progression over in Capricorn, where it's cold and doesn't really care that it has created this big old show or this act for the people and has toxically infected them with circumstances they can no longer tolerate. It isn't feasible. Homelessness is happening for a reason. Our streets are stacking up for a reason. And if you care about these issues, you need to wake up and be a part of the solution. And that is put your light on in your soul and start shining it, because it is through shining the light that we get that King of Cups, some relief, some much needed loving relief. Because in the court cards, the king is going to be that liquidy relationship, that loving energy that brings forth soothing hope that we much need right now. Honestly, I don't know how people are going to make it. I have children I love who have children again that I love, and that I want them to be able to pay their bills and to be able to live a life. And I don't right now have a lot of hope that they're going to be able to live a life of financial ease under these circumstances, because we are currently under a form of financial dis-ease. We have been taught to go out, put it on the credit card. If we can't buy it right this time, we can pay for it on time. You know, what I don't have to think about today, I could think about tomorrow, which makes it easy for us to overcharge our credit cards. So please be careful, because I am seeing a little bit of a backlash here. I'm seeing if you charge your cards up, they're going to start limiting how much you can charge. I think they're already doing this. I don't know for sure, because I don't use credit cards. I don't like them. Secondly, I think that people who have used the cards are going to find themselves being required to pay more interest and to have more demands put upon them. The minute they do something wrong, more interest, more demands put upon. So these banks, this problem, this dis-ease with greed, it is going to continue for the time being. So with that, I thank you very much for joining me here today for this weekly forecast. Please do hit the like, share, and subscribe. And if you have something you want me to read, you have some ideas of your own that you'd like to talk about, provided it is non-political, because the political stuff, we all have opinions. And I personally don't really want to, I don't want to share an opinion. I want to share as best I can what's right for our community, for the right reasons spiritually. So with that, I thank you very much for joining me here today.